How B2B marketing is measured today sets leaders up to fail, and I'm about to explain exactly why. The problem was never just your reporting. There's a gap between where a lead came from and why it became a deal, and the majority of companies are completely blind to it. Trust me, I'd know because I've lived it myself. I spent years as a head of RevOps trying to answer questions from my CMO. My report showed revenue going up or down, but I could never confidently tell marketing if it was their ads, their emails, or their events actually making us money. In this video, I'll break down why almost every company is struggling to see what's driving their revenue, why reaching for AI or a new attribution tool makes the problem worse before it makes it better, and what it actually takes to fix this. Let's get into it. Before we get into the mechanics of how your data breaks down, I want to put something on the table that most people just skip over. Your CRM data isn't just incomplete, it's actively misleading. Not because anyone did anything wrong, but because the system was built to record deals, not to capture a whole story of how those deals happened. The tricky part is you can't tell from looking at your reports which numbers are solid and which ones are sitting on top of a problem you don't even know about yet. It's like there's landmines out there. You might be standing on one right now and not feel any pressure underfoot. The magnitude of what's broken in your data is completely invisible until someone starts digging. And sometimes the first sign is when a number that you've been reporting on for 2 years falls apart in a board meeting. That's the worst. I say this because right now, the obvious move when you feel this problem is to reach for AI. Feed your data into a model, let it surface the patterns and it'll tell you what's working. But here's the issue. When your underlying data has the kinds of gaps I'm going to talk about, what AI gives you back is directional at best and completely fake at worst. The model is confident. It gives you a clean answer, and that confidence is dangerous because a confident wrong answer is harder to push back on than an honest, I don't know. The same goes for attribution. These tools sit on top of your existing data and they try to assign credit across the buyer cycle. But if that cycle was never fully recorded, you're not getting a better picture. You're getting a more polished version of the same incomplete one. And your team usually ends up holding the bag when the tool surfaces data inconsistencies that nobody has the bandwidth to clean up. Here's what fixing this usually looks like. Somebody has to go in and do your plumbing work for you. Either your team takes it on, which realistically means a big project involving revenue operations, marketing operations, sales, budget somewhere that doesn't exist. It takes 6 to 12 months to even get the project completed. Never mind if the team got the data model right or not. The other option is working with a third party or bringing in a BI expert who can take your raw data as it is, normalize it, reconstruct it, and give you out on the other side a clean model that you can rely on. But there is no one tool that you can buy that will just allow you to skip over this step. Once the foundation is solid, everything changes. So let's start with lead source, because almost every number that you report on as the head of marketing traces back to it. Now, you might have a different name for this in your CRM, like opportunity source or just source, but this is usually an opportunity field in your CRM that's supposed to record where each lead came from, whether that's first touch or last touch or the 4-funnel model or the like. Now, when I mention CRM data, you might be picturing this like sanitized PowerPoint that you pull up before a board meeting. But when your operations lead hears CRM data, they're picturing hundreds of little boxes that somebody had to validate manually, one record at a time. Or maybe nobody's checking it at all, which is even worse. Every number in your report comes straight out of those CRM boxes. And the person pulling the data for you for that pretty PowerPoint has a lot of power to fudge things up along the way. The question almost nobody asks is how that lead source data got populated and how consistently are those rules applied. Sometimes the data comes in automatically from a webinar or a content download, maybe a list upload or an event. But a lot of the time, the sales rep might have just picked one of the the options from a drop-down menu because they didn't know what else to pick. And that's exactly what we saw at one of the companies we work with, where the sales reps were consistently choosing website referral to fill in the lead source gap that no other option could cleanly explain. But when we looked at what all those records had in common, website referral almost never meant that the person actually came through the website. It meant the rep knew marketing was involved somehow, but they didn't know which option was right, so they just picked the easy one. Their sales. Nobody's lying. The system just gave them nowhere to record what actually happened, which shouldn't have been their responsibility anyways. That becomes a problem when a narrow checkbox is supposed to tell you as the marketing leader what to invest in or pull back on. There are two more ways that same lead source can end up deceptively wrong. The first way is that most systems only keep the most recent answer. So when a lead comes back months later from a different channel than how they originally came through, that new answer just replaces the old one, and you lose where lead first found you and a key step in their journey. The second, any deals won before your CRM was set up to capture that field properly of lead source, or anything that predates a migration or a merger, is literally a black hole. There's nothing there for you, and stitching that data together is something that most internal teams are just not equipped to do. So that one quick answer of where your leads came from ends up being treated as the single source of truth for the entire deal and marketing's contribution. And that's a real problem, because one deal can take 12 or more months across both marketing and sales to close, but all the credit ends up sitting on that one data point, the lead source. I know exactly how this happens because I did it myself for years. Guilty. When I was the head of RevOps, the slide that I opened every QBR with was one big funnel with the 4 stages: leads, MQLs, SQLs, and won deals. Down the side of that slide, it showed marketing was up 65% on MQLs and our won deals were up 25% over the prior quarter. But what it would never show is how few people actually made it from one stage to the next. We had a massive number of prospects turning into just a tiny number of real deals. And on that slide, it still looked like a great quarter. Now that I work with clients here at Passetto, I realize that whole measurement methodology is flawed and kind of a little bit silly. Just building that slide every quarter was a problem all in its own. The whole thing ends up in Excel or somewhere that you have to replicate every single time, and nobody remembers the gymnastics that it took to get there except for the one key person who's responsible for the report. I was the only person who knew how to put it all together, and it ran off a bunch of hidden boxes that we were tracking inside Salesforce. So every quarter, I had to produce a report that only I could really explain where it came from, which doesn't make much sense and isn't fair to the marketing leader or the executive team, who really can just come in and poke holes in the data whenever they want. Now, none of this becomes a problem until the day somebody asks my CMO a question that he can't answer. Take one of the marketing leaders that we work with here, who just had a huge Q1 where her pipeline was actually way up. And then her CEO asked a really simple question: what caused pipeline to jump this quarter? The truth was that she had a hypothesis, but she couldn't show proof. The real problem was that there was no report that could have helped her answer it, because what actually created those deals was never captured in a field in Salesforce or HubSpot. The data was right there in front of them, just not in a form that could answer the question. Then there's what happens when someone challenges you in the room as a marketing leader. One marketing leader that we work with got really excited about something that we found in his data. The scary part is that having the right hypothesis doesn't matter. The second that your board prep depends on a number you can't prove, all it takes is one person questioning it, and you've got nothing to back yourself up. Whoever can explain their number is the one that everyone believes, whether they're right or not. The most convicted person in the room often wins. This is exactly where a lot of marketing teams are right now. You already know that your conversion to pipeline, for example, needs to improve, but you have no idea why it's low in the first place. We see companies converting at 2%, and there's nothing in their reporting to explain it. So they end up making educated guesses, which is a terrible way to spend your budget or your team's time. Now, real quick, if you want to see which marketing KPIs you should be tracking versus what you're tracking today, click the first link in the description below. It's a free 10-minute assessment. You'll walk away knowing exactly where your measurement has gaps and what each missing data point would let you say that you can't say confidently right now. No sales call required, just go do it. Okay, back to the video. So if you can't look back at any closed won deal and see what actually created it, the real question is, where did all that history go? What I see is it gets lost in 3 specific places. The tricky part is all 3 of them are things that your team is doing right now, and none of them look like a problem while they're happening. The first place this data gets lost is a contact who was involved in closing the deal but was never linked to the opportunity in your CRM. Sound familiar? Think about how a deal actually gets done at most B2B companies. There are usually 2, 3, sometimes 5 people or more on the buying side who are actively evaluating you. Their opinions matter. They attend your webinars. They download your content. But if the sales rep only adds the primary contact to the opportunity record, none of that other engagement exists in a way that you can piece it together. So when you go back and look at what marketing contributed to that deal, you see one person's journey if you're lucky. The signal from everyone else is just gone, like it didn't even matter. That deal looks like marketing barely touched it, when in reality, marketing was in front of the whole buying committee the entire time, starting 6 months or a year before they ever booked a demo. The second place this data gets lost is when a lead goes cold, comes back later, and sales opens a brand new opportunity record for it. Now, this happens constantly. Prospect engages with marketing, gets handed to sales, doesn't buy right now. Sales closes the opportunity as lost or rejected, and they just to keep the CRM data clean. But then 6 months later, the same person raises their hand again, and so sales opens a new opportunity record, as they should. That new opportunity record has no connection to the original one. So the content they downloaded, the events they attended, the ads they clicked in their first cycle, none of it shows up in the new deal's history or influence at all. The deal looks like it just materialized out of nowhere, when actually marketing had been building that relationship for a year, 2 years, sometimes more. The third place this data gets lost, and one of the most overlooked and undervalued, it tends to hit companies that have gone through an acquisition or a merger. Picture a new VP of marketing coming into a company that recently acquired another business. They want to understand pipeline creation and what's been driving revenue. But the only data available for that acquired company is what got migrated into the main CRM, right? Usually treated as like an administrative sales reporting sort of process. But here's the problem. Migrated data often loses the original timestamps. The opportunity was created at one date in the old system, but when it moved to the new one, it got a totally new created date, maybe even a new close date that's just not really real. And so now there's no reliable way to know when that pipeline was created. And even if you have the marketing automation data, you can't match it up with pipeline or closed one because the data has now been flattened and it's completely useless. You can't match those won opportunities with any marketing activity from the previous periods. You can't say whether a campaign that ran 2 years ago had anything to do with those deals. The data exists, but it doesn't connect to anything that lets you tell the marketing story. So for a new VP trying to understand the baseline that she inherited, that's a complete blind spot that she's building her first strategy on top of. Look, you don't have to fix all of this before your next board meeting. But what you do need is to know what your data can and can't actually prove before you put those numbers in front of your leadership. You need to understand the lay of the land and where those landmines may be that you need to look out for. So here are 2 quick things worth checking on with your team this week. The first thing is I want you to pull up your opportunity lead source field or whatever it's called and actually look at what's in there. What values exist for that dropdown, for example? and what's actually being reported on. Is this being reported up to leadership, the executive team, sales, etc.? If sales and marketing pull that field into separate reports, compare them side by side and understand where they differ. Are you using a different way to report on pipeline and revenue than your chief sales officer is? For each value that shows up with the lead source, is it being populated automatically by automations, or is someone selecting it manually, or maybe a list of both? What's the actual definition of each value that could go in the lead source property? What does it mean? Where is that information stored? Does your leadership team understand what it means? Do you understand what it means? Does your revenue operations team consistently understand and activate on what that means? Does the sales team understand what it means when they're choosing? These are all things that can get lost in translation that skew the data. Is this lead source field being applied the same way by every person on your team and across every team? Does your leadership understand what those values mean? Do you even understand or agree with what it's saying? If this is something that's being reported up the chain, do the people receiving it have the same understanding as the people who are actually responsible for entering the data? Because if they don't, you're all looking at the same number and you're thinking completely different things and taking different actions. The second thing I want you to do is take 5, 10 opportunities you recently won and try to reconstruct what actually happened. Not just the lead source field, but I want you to look at the full picture. So look at every contact on the opportunity records, every contact associated with the account, every contact that your sales rep engaged with across the journey of actually winning that account. Then cross-reference against your marketing automation platform. What did those people engage with? When were the contacts created relative to when the opportunity was open? Try to trace what it actually took to get the deal created and then what it took to get the deal closed. Where were the different cycles? How many cycles were there? Was it close loss first, or did they not pick up the phone first and then they showed up as a deal later? Where did the relationship really start? Then compare that picture to what your lead source field says. Do this for a handful of deals and you'll start to see exactly where your measurement breaks down, whether it's a definition problem, a consistency problem between teams and automation, or just a gap between what actually happened and what your data recorded that you can roll up into a report. Once you know where the gaps are, you have a real decision to make. And I want to be honest about what fixing this actually looks like. If you're going to do this internally, budget for a beefy project, not a quick cleanup. You need dedicated alignment between your revenue operations, marketing, sales leadership, because you can't change what gets recorded without changing how sales uses the system sometimes. And that's where most of these projects stall. If you have the right people and the right buy-in, expect 6 to 12 months before your data is reliable enough to build a new measurement model on top of it to help you see what marketing is contributing and what to fix. The other path is to work with a team or hire someone externally to take your data as it is, do some normalization in the background, reconstruct the data based on a measurement model that's proven to work, and give you something clean to work from without waiting for the internal project to finish. Either way, someone has to do this work of normalizing the data and making it fit into a model that will give you those answers that you're looking for. Either way, the work has to be done. There is no layer that you can add on top of broken, messed up, inconsistent, wrong data that gets you to a defensible answer at the board level. And every quarter that you skip over this is another quarter of reporting on numbers you can't fully stand behind or you can't fully prove. Now, those 2 checks that I just showed you, auditing what your lead source values actually mean versus how consistently they're applied, and reconstructing the real story behind just a handful of actual deals will tell you how much of your own reporting you can really trust right now. But here's what I want you to sit with. Every quarter you spend reporting on numbers you can't explain is a quarter where someone else in that room has more credibility than you do. Not because they're right, because they can point to a source that's defensible and you can't. The data problem doesn't fix itself. Layering AI or a new attribution tool on top of it doesn't make it better. It makes the wrong answer look more convincing and risks you credibility and your job. So if you want to stop walking into those meetings without solid ground under you, the first step is just knowing what your data can and can't actually tell you right now. And that's what this free assessment in the link below will show you. It takes literally 10 minutes. It tells you exactly which KPIs you're missing, and it shows you what each one would let you say that you can't say right now. The longer you wait on this, the more budget goes towards the things that you can't measure, and the harder it gets to defend the ones that you can. Click the link below, take the assessment, and if you want the 5 quick ways to actually start fixing your tracking, then check out this next video.